have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA.
I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And we got a lot of news this week, starting off in Russia, where there are lots of developments in the crisis there, including a new tussle with the IOC, movement on a bill there to take children away from gay parents. Wait till you hear when they're bringing that up.
Yep.
And the New York City Tourist Bureau closing its Moscow office over the safety of gay staff.
It's just cascading in. And the Supreme Court of the United States opened its fall session this week with a couple of good immediate decisions on issues relevant to us, and more to come.
Pennsylvania, as you know, is being sued over not providing marriage equality. So the governor there took this moment to compare gay marriage to incest.
He got a little blowback on that.
Incest.
Speaking,
which is also illegal, he said.
Well, and speaking of some other ugly comments, the Laramie Project about the murder of Matthew Shepard, the play about that, was subjected to some very ugly heckling, some of it anti-gay heckling, at the University of Mississippi.
A controversial new HBO documentary looks at the murder of trans teen Larry King out there in Oxnard, California.
We've both seen it. We'll give you our reactions. It's still playing on HBO. And we'll also review a new drag parody musical comedy, Mildred Fierce.
What could that be about? Mildred Fierce. Also, I saw Honeymoon in Vegas, the musical out at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and the new Broadway revival of The Glass Menagerie without gay stars, Cherry Jones and Zachary Quinto.
Yeah, and we saw a few other things. Well, we have updates on Glee and Survivor.
But we start by asking the president to invoke the 14th Amendment and get the government going and raise the debt ceiling. Just do it, Barack. I know he watches the show every week with the family.
No,
please.
Sasha and Malia, they're watching.
Sasha and Malia, please tell him.
And Bo the
to
dog.
Just do it and stop this nonsense.
Well, pending that, we want Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, to just do it and get over this anti-gay stuff, especially if he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
For what? Oh, for Syria. Well, along with other great winners like Henry Kissinger and Yasser Arafat.
And how about Barack Obama at the beginning of his term?
While he was fighting two wars.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Russia. Let's skim through some headlines of what's happened in the last week. One big headline is that they went ahead and banned adoption of orphaned Russian children by anyone from Sweden, because they passed a law that, as part of this whole anti-gay package, that said they will no longer allow countries that legalize same-sex marriage or any same-sex relationships to have their citizens adopt Russian children.
So Russia is now going to seek legal agreements with these countries, ensuring that only heterosexual couples are allowed to adopt. Now, of course, as we told you, there is a bill in Russia to deny gay parents custody of their children. And when is it coming up, Anne?
It's coming up in February, when the Winter Olympics will be held in Sochi, Russia.
Well, all of this would suggest that the children of gay athletes will not be safe in Sochi. They could have their children grabbed from them.
I'm chuckling, but the fact is,
it's not a joke.
But
it's all real.
It is really astonishing that they keep doing these things in the face of all the international protest, which is growing, which we're about to give you more details of. But how in the world could the Duma, the Russian parliament, schedule its discussion of taking kids away from gay parents in the middle of the Winter Olympics?
I think they're trying to make a point here. Don't tell us what to do.
I guess so. Well, the person who did tell them what to do, it turns out, was the National Organization for Marriage's Brian Brown.
Well, they're on the run in the United States. They're not doing too well here lately.
We have observed this for several years, that all this stuff being fomented around the world is because the right wing here was losing out here, not making money anymore, not raising money, and losing all these legal fights. And so
you expand into foreign markets.
And I've described it as a full circle movement. I think what they do is they're headed out around the world to Africa, to Eastern Europe, to Russia, to spread their bile and then eventually bring it back here.
Well, no, eventually they'll have to go to outer space. But Brian Brown was in Moscow to support he's supporting the bill banning adoption of gays by gays and unmarried couples.
He told them how to do it.
And
this was months ago he was there. He talked to the Duma about how to do this.
Here's his quote. Every child should have the right to normal parents, a father and a mother. You know, they started off by just saying, "Oh no, we're not against gays or anything," and it's become it's just marriage is traditional. It's bull.
Well, I'm
They're
happy
bigots.
I'm happy to tell you that our pal Fred Karger remains on Brian Brown's tail. He has now asked the United States government to investigate Brian Brown for violating the Logan Act, which says that U.S. citizens cannot negotiate with foreign countries, with foreign governments against U.S. interests. And so if Brian Brown is going to Uganda and to Russia and saying, keep those U.S. citizens from adopting Russian children, that is against the interests of the United States.
Well, Fred is one of the good Republicans.
Yes, he is.
He ran for president, of course.
And he's chasing NOM about their donors, and we still don't have the list of the 5 people in the United States who are funding the National Organization for Marriage.
But not everybody is expanding in Russia. Some people are contracting. NYC and Company, which is the tourist bureau in New York City, the head of it was at a forum and he said, we're closing our Moscow office. It is not safe for us to send our gay employees to Russia. So they're closing the office. They said there are other reasons. It's a bad market. It's dicey, we want to expand into Latin America. But that was the reason.
Well, here's the kind of thing. Here's a mild version of the kind of thing that's happening in Russia now. There was a protest staged by 6 activists protesting the Steal the Kids law.
They're on the screen now.
They're in Moscow, and I love those colored smoke flare things.
Rainbow flares.
Those are the things we took to the NIH many years ago with ACT UP.
Anyway, the activists were chanting, Hitler too began with gays, no fascism in Russia, and the police detained 4 of them and a passerby, and some of the bystanders demanded that the police stop touching the protesters.
Well, there was an interesting confrontation because you see that the cops are now getting kind of rough with the protesters. So
As usual.
So some people are laughing at them and think this is funny to have the cops brutalizing the protesters. But then you have this older woman in her camel coat and hat stepping in and trying to pull the cops off the protesters. And she gets quite mad at the cops. But eventually what she does is she talks to the protesters, finds out what they're mad about, and starts lecturing them because she's not down with the gays. But then the cops keep going after the protesters, and so she ends up, again, telling the cops to stay away from the protesters.
Well, it takes a lot of guts to protest in Russia. I just, we've got to give them credit.
And these people, they were simply walking along with a banner and those flares, and the cops are just insisting on taking everything away, and this is not as violent as some of the thugs that beat people to death, but it's a confrontation nonetheless. So
Listen,
thank you. We've had enough of that.
It really is dicey over there, and the U.S. State Department issued a travel warning on Russia for Americans going there. Warning of the violence inspired by the anti-gay laws. It's up on their website.
And there have been some reports by Russian activists. An interview in Gay City News this week. Gay City News, a publication for which you write, has a special Russia edition out now, and you can see it online at gaycitynews.com. It's an important issue, and particularly an interview that Doug Ireland does with Nikolai Bayev, a veteran activist who has brought a lawsuit challenging these anti-gay laws. He's been arrested 4 times, and he talks at great length about the real situation in Russia for gay people and the crackdowns that are happening and how scary it is and what the whole atmosphere is. So I really recommend that you go to gaycitynews.com to read that and read your story about
NYC and Company.
Yes, that's
of course.
in
I
there.
called the Mayor Bloomberg to see who wants all the Russian billionaires to come live in New York, and he didn't respond to what his travel agency is doing.
And the International Olympic Committee is in more trouble about this because they've been pressed, particularly by All Out, which is an international pro-gay organization, about whether or not they are fulfilling as they should Principle 6 of the Olympic Charter, which outlaws any form of discrimination, says it's incompatible with belonging to the Olympic movement.
Principle 6 has become the name of a new group.
Well, that's a little dicey, I think.
Okay, but we'll get to that.
Well, we can get to it right now because the All Out, in league with Athlete Ally and others, has decided that the way to get around the no protest rules imposed by the Russians and by the IOC is to say, all right, no rainbow flags, no rainbow pins, no press conferences. We're all just going to wear little things that say Respect 6. Meaning Principle 6 of the Olympic Charter.
I remember when we said no on 6 in California. That was a long time ago
Well,
with
it's
Harvey
just
Milk.
It's closeting everything again,
Yes.
and it's and Athlete
Well,
Ally.
I mean, wait a minute. We conquered. We took over the rainbow. They can't use it anymore. Maybe we could take over the number 6. They'd probably want to ban it from Sesame Street if we do. Anyway, 16 athletes wrote the IOC chief, Bach, to speak out about the human rights situation in Russia.
And 30 United States representatives wrote the USOC to support Americans standing up for LGBT Russians, and they criticized the IOC. The USOC says that it is going to propose, 10 years from now or something, that the Olympic Charter be amended to specifically ban discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation.
So who was the one who, I'm sorry, and I'm asking my co-host here, who was the one who said that it absolutely includes opposition to discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation?
Oh, they've said it all. The IOC has said it all along.
They just don't have it spelled out in the charter.
No, they don't. It says, race, religion, gender, and others.
I mean, All Out was calling this a small but important victory. But Omar Sharif Jr. of GLAAD said that the IOC still can't say the word gay.
No, they can't.
Or add protections to the charter. And they're still leaving athletes in a very precarious situation if they want to be out. And All Out wants more pressure from the IOC to end the anti-gay laws, which the IOC says we don't get involved with that stuff.
Exactly. And we reported last week, and a lot of people...
We didn't do it in Germany, and we're not doing it now.
The reports last week were that Jean-Claude Killy, representing the IOC, had said that the Russians were fine. Russian law complied with Principle 6. The Russian anti-gay law was okay under Principle 6, and everybody went, "Whoa! How is that possible?" And the IOC said, "No, he was misquoted. He never said that. But we're just not commenting on it at all." That's not a step forward. The European Parliament this week is debating...
Well, before you go on, I mean, you mentioned the Congress members. I mean,
Yeah.
one of them is Florida Republican Roz Lehtinen. Is that how you say her name?
Yes.
She said that the U.S. Olympic Committee has been complicit in this act of aggression.
Yes.
Because they say, we respect Russia's right to do this. This is not, she says, this is not worthy of Olympic standards. I want to recommend that, speaking of Germany, people go watch the Marty Glickman documentary
Yes.
on HBO.
Yes.
Because he was the U.S. athlete, 18 years old, a Jew.
Is it HBO or is it part of the ESPN 30 for
Oh,
30?
maybe it is ESPN 30. But no, I saw it. Well,
Okay.
anyway,
I
saw
don't
it.
know. I'm just
There's a
guessing.
documentary out there about Marty Glickman. Anyway, he was a great sportscaster in his later life, but it's fascinating about how he was discriminated against by the United States at the German Olympics in 1936.
The chairman of the Duma has invited European members of parliament, the members of the European Parliament, to visit Moscow gay clubs to prove that gay people have equal rights in Moscow, as long as they're behind closed doors in a smoky club.
I don't know about closed doors because Russia has a new surveillance law.
Oh yes,
Which will allow the monitoring of all phone and internet, making gay rights organizing difficult.
People are being warned that not only are they doing this to preclude demonstrations at the Olympic Games, but they're going to steal all the corporations' trade secrets too. They're just going to sweep up everything. They're going to make the NSA look like pikers.
Which is very difficult.
All right, here's some...
Can we give them some good news?
Sure. Joyce DiDonato, our friend who sang Over the Rainbow at the London Proms, has declined an invitation to perform with the opera in Moscow.
And in the St. Petersburg Film Festival won its final appeal of violating the foreign agents law over there. And so its fine of more than $10,000 has been annulled, but the case against the head of the group is still pending.
And in Ryazan, a regional court, which is one of these places that was one of the early towns to pass the anti-gay propaganda laws, well, they'd convicted a lone activist who'd stood in the street holding signs saying, "I'm proud of my homosexuality. Homosexuality is normal." And he'd stood in front of schools with these signs to challenge the idea that you couldn't say this to kids. And he'd been convicted 4 years ago. Well, the court has now overturned the conviction because the UN Committee on Human Rights said it was illegal persecution, contrary to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And so the court took the UN judgment on this and overturned the conviction, which is great.
But that's not stopping Vitaly Milanov, the author of the St. Petersburg anti-gay law, in his latest interview
his latest
interview on Swedish TV, because you heard about we told you about the Swedish situation. He called us perverts and said kids are better off in orphanages than with gays, where they will be destroyed psychologically.
Well, these people, they're still relying on the Regnerus study. They
got a new one they can use.
Well, we'll get to that. Chelsea Handler has announced that she is canceling a trip to Russia because she's not going while that A blank is running the country. I'd like to quote the whole word, but you know what I'm saying.
What about the good news about the Olympic flame?
1 second. As long as we're doing celebrity news.
You got to wait for this.
I want to point out that Andre Leon Talley, is he gay? Isn't he gay? He's
says
had
no.
gay experiences. He's not gay. Who knows?
He's the
big Vogue editor.
flamboyant editor of Vogue.
Yeah.
I don't say that disparagingly. He's quite, out there.
And intelligent. So he's on MSNBC this week. He says he's reluctant to go to Russia. He's talked to a major designer who has stores there who won't go. He thinks everybody should boycott the Olympics.
There you go.
Don't go to the Olympics. It's shameful.
We're with you.
And
we would have you on Gay USA even if you're not gay.
He's been to Moscow and he has felt very uncomfortable with the skinheads around. He's asked for extra security. And he says in the next issue of Vogue, he has a big story where he has subversively interviewed gay people in Russia, and it is going to blow the head off of Putin.
Let's hope so.
Vogue, next issue.
Is it going to include anything about Putin's sexuality?
I don't know. All right. So you want to see the torch thing? Well, this the big event for the Olympics this last week was that the torch relay started in Greece.
Yeah, and it was protested by a few dozen protesters condemning Russia's anti-gay laws there.
So then the torch got to Moscow, and this ex-Olympian is carrying it, but he realizes the flame's gone out. So he calls over a bystander and has him relight it with a Zippo lighter.
Oh,
this is illegal under Olympic rules. You cannot do that.
That's in the charter. But you know, I say flames are flames. Now that looks like a pretty rainbow outfit to me.
And a rainbow.
He's got rainbow gloves on. What the hell's
Those
going
are
on
the
here?
5 colors of the Olympic rings.
They're rainbows.
Yes, they are.
So all people have to do is wear Olympic colors.
Exactly. And they have gotten.
Make sure you got your.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
you
just
make
the
sure you're all
battery
connected
pack.
there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, so he looks like a rainbow flag, but he's actually missing 1 or 2 colors from the official rainbow flag. But here he is running the flame through Moscow. And the other thing you'll notice, aside from the fact that he's illegally relit the torch with a lighter, you're supposed to light it from the extra flame that they carry around from Greece.
Fire is fire, and people are people, gay and straight.
Where are the people? There are no people.
Right.
This is Russia's big event, and there are no people.
Nobody's watching. Well, like you know, the Winter Olympics aren't as much. People aren't into them as much as they are into the Summer
This is
Olympics.
Putin's big showcase event, and there are no people as this guy huffs and puffs his way along with the Olympic
Okay,
flag.
enough of him.
Okay.
All right.
Well, he was cute. And you want to see more rainbow...
He's probably going to jail.
Rainbow flags. Look at the German Olympic team's
Yes.
uniforms. I think they're probably going to wear these for opening ceremonies.
We got a.
yeah,
There they
there they
are.
are. That's
Another rainbow outfit.
The German Olympic team.
Well,
that's what you'll see in Sochi. Okay. Well, that's all good. Yes, the surveillance, we got that. The European Parliament is going to discuss Russian homophobia this week. That will be posted online, so you can catch up with that if you want to see that. By the way, did you know that the IOC head, the new guy, Thomas Bach, is the head of a German Arab group that is in business to boycott any trade with Israel?
Maybe we can get some new allies.
They examine all products coming out of the Middle East to make sure there is no Israeli content.
And I just want to say, I did mention Yasser Arafat in a negative context, but I thought Henry Kissinger was worse.
I couldn't agree with you more. Some Russian gay athletes were at the World Out Games in Antwerp. And they had their picture taken in a group in one of those no-hate pictures where they have duct tape on their mouths and NOH8.
What's going to happen to them?
I don't know. I don't know if they went back to Russia. And, you know, the Russian conductor that we've been abusing who's in New York doing concerts, we
went after him at the Met Museum, the Metropolitan Opera.
And we went after him again this week at Carnegie Hall. And he's been refusing all interviews. But finally, the Russian publication, Russia Today, caught up with him at a reception and asked him about all this. Because he's been refusing interviews because he doesn't want to talk about it. Yeah, no, not even that. No interview. This week he said, I don't have time for all that. I have to concentrate on my music.
Oh, I get it.
All right, I think that's all of Russia for the moment. Let's move on.
Well, okay, let's move on to marriage news.
Okay.
You know, Pennsylvania there's a lawsuit there, of course, where they started issuing licenses and they've been stopped, and there's a lawsuit. And one of the state's arguments against same-sex marriage, which is now being made by the governor's office, is that it is illegal just like not letting children marry. So Governor Tom Corbett was asked about this, and we actually have his response in a video. Can we raise that up now? There we go. We're trying to.
Here in Pennsylvania. I spoke with Governor Corbett about it when he stopped by our CBS 21.
Just need a little more
Sound.
audio.
Marriage. That's a big topic that's going on
Sound?
right now, continues to be in the news. And we already touched upon, there was a controversial remark made by a member of your legal team comparing gay marriage to the union of 12-year-olds, saying both are illegal, which you called inappropriate.
It was an inappropriate analogy. You know, I think a much better analogy would have been brother and sister, don't you?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the comments to you and your team, but you did say it was inappropriate, and you have a better phrasing that you think. But I do want to touch upon the fact that a state judge did say that Montgomery County Clerk Bruce
done
Haynes
with
must
that.
stop issuing marriage licenses
Okay.
to state.
Thank
So he went from comparing same-sex marriage to 12-year-olds getting married is inappropriate. Brother and sister, much better analogy.
Yeah, which is comparing us to incest. So he also said the U.S. Supreme Court left this up to the states, and the federal court should not be involved in the case. Now, Representative Brian Sims, who's out gay there, said of Corbett, no one, even in his own party, would argue that he is an intellectual heavyweight or even a particularly thoughtful person. Sims just introduced a marriage equality bill in the
Yes.
legislature.
Yes.
Corbett then issues a non-apology apology 6 hours after this interview and saying, my words were not intended to offend anyone. If they did, I apologize. Well, of course, Bloomberg, the mayor in this town, he cited Leviticus in trying to stop us from marrying, and he was successful in court.
Yes, let's hopscotch through a few other marriage or marriage-related stories. In Missoula, Montana, they have officially opened their domestic partner registry, which is available for both same-sex and opposite-sex couples. Thank you, Missoula.
We've told you about the whole controversy over the National Guard not registering same-sex spouses in some states. Senator Carl Levin, among others, is pressuring the Department of Defense to get them in line about granting the benefits to same-sex spouses. South Carolina is the latest to refuse.
Yes. Berkeley, California City Council has not done what we thought they might do. They are refusing to drop their domestic partner registry. In fact, they're going to hold a celebration of it.
Well, we haven't dropped it in New York either. And most of the people who take advantage of it are non-gay couples. Now, we've told you there are many, many, many lawsuits around the country around this issue, around same-sex marriage. Freedom to Marry, you can go to their website, freedomtomarry.org/litigation. They've got a compendium of all the cases. And of course, at this point, some people are pushing for the Obama administration to back them. Others are saying we don't need them involved at this point. Everybody knows what they think.
Wait till they get to the Supreme Court. And in fact, we've told you about the cases that in Virginia that Olson and Boyce have joined, and other cases coming along. And the Supreme Court session is open, and SCOTUS blog, which is the one we all sat at our computers watching, waiting for the Windsor v. U.S. decision on DOMA. They are the top of the heap in terms of reporting on the Supreme Court. And one of their writers was writing about gay cases likely to come to the court. And they said, we've got these cases that are building up to go to the Supreme Court on whether the U.S. Constitution requires equal protection and allowing of same-sex marriage everywhere. And we've got these other cases coming on whether the states are allowed to have their constitutional amendments they've all passed against same-sex marriage, or whether that's unconstitutional. And he said, these cases are coming to the Supreme Court on a rocket ship.
Does that mean that they could actually be heard this session?
I think they'll be heard next week. No, of course.
Well, we're laughing, but one of our arguments is that there is immediate harm to people. That's certainly the argument in New Jersey, where people get all kinds of benefits, but they can't get federal benefits because Chris Christie won't let them get married.
I think the point is that we are at a particular point in time. The DOMA decision helped this along, but you can look at everything that's happening around the Russia issue too. The floodgates have opened.
Well, sticking with the New Jersey case, yes, the state has appealed the good decision that we got there that said the marriages have to begin on October 21st, but Lambda is telling the judge to deny a stay in this case.
We talked about
yes,
that last
well,
week. Yes.
Okay. So, anyway.
There's also a case in Kentucky asking for recognition of a same-sex marriage performed in Canada for a Kentucky couple who then went back to Kentucky and want that marriage recognized. And the Kentucky Attorney General, unlike attorneys general in Pennsylvania and elsewhere, has filed opposition to that recognition of the same-sex marriage. So that case is moving along in Kentucky.
Idaho, like some other states where they don't allow same-sex marriage, is changing its policy to ensure that same-sex married couples can no longer use their federal figures to calculate their taxes.
But we knew this. This is
well,
what
but they're having to actually go in back and change their laws, pass new laws to
so that
to
people
do this.
can't use the federal form to file their
Yes.
state forms.
And somebody is bringing up a case in another state saying, hey, this is forcing all this extra work and all this other kind of stuff on.
Of
Well,
course,
wait a minute.
but that's just the reverse of the extra work before
Wait a minute. And
got
they're
rid of
saying
DOMA.
that in itself is an unconstitutional infringement on them. So
There are limits on work.
just saying,
Well,
you can't treat people differently.
I'd love us to win those cases, but to me, this is just, we went
Okay.
from AB to BA.
All right.
In Orange County, California, a notary there has refused to perform same-sex marriages. The ACLU is asking the state to revoke his license, but it turns out that he and his clerk say only the state is only authorizing him to issue marriage licenses, which he is still agreeing to do. Performing the marriages is a separate thing, not state authorized
I don't
in the
know how
same
it works
way.
out there.
Well, it's complicated.
And it's
so-
complicated in California, where Governor Jerry Brown has signed a bill. This is actually to help simplify things. He signed a bill to let children have more than 2 legal parents. It sounds bizarre, but there's a reason for this. It deals with same-sex parents who have a child with an opposite-sex biological parent. It lets the courts record 3 or more to share custody and financial responsibility.
I think it's great.
Here's how it came about. In 2011, a lesbian couple briefly broke up. Then they got back together with one of them pregnant by a man. And they fought, and he went to jail, the guy who impregnated her. And because the couple had fought, had a fight, they took the kid away from them, and they didn't give it. There was nobody to give it to the biological parent, and the kid ended up in foster care as a result of this.
Well, there are all sorts of permutations of this, and there have long been fights about who's responsible and who has access to kids, custody, support, all sorts of things. And to be able to declare more than 2 parents is a great step forward in being able to sort these things out.
Yes.
The artificial restriction to 2 parents has been a real bad thing for the last few years as we've developed these more complicated families.
Right. And, marriage has only been this way for 2,000 years, according to Governor Christie in his debate. For 2,000 years. I guess Jesus invented marriage, right? It was at the wedding feast at Cana. He invented marriage. It was a miracle. Fuck. He is. If you
Watch
fall
your
for
language.
if you fall for that stuff, he acts so sincere. And when he was questioned about him wanting a vote on same-sex marriage, which he's going to have to do eventually, he says, 35 states have had it. They can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Is everybody wrong? Yes,
Well,
they're wrong.
According to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary president, the Bushes were wrong, George and Barbara, when they were official witnesses at the lesbian wedding in Maine.
Are they Southern Baptists?
I don't know, but
they're going to get
I don't think
excommunicated?
so. I think this is just an ex cathedra statement by the Southern Baptist president. He says, being a witness to a wedding is not a neutral act. It
That's
is
correct.
agreeing to the
Well,
marriage.
I always say it's a fairly neutral act when I sign a petition just to get somebody on the ballots, which we will talk about later in another case.
In the South, the campaign for Southern Equality marches on with a couple of actions in North Carolina. In Hendersonville, a lesbian couple together for 40 years, Mary and Carol, applied for a marriage license, were turned down. Another couple went for marriage licenses in Charlotte, North Carolina. And you can read all about this and follow the movement in the South at southernequality.org. It's fascinating. The floodgates really are open. With the lawsuit in Kentucky, with these actions, direct action.
It's like a rocket ship.
It is.
What about our boys in uniform?
Well,
Are they on the rocket ship?
You may remember. Oh, they've landed. Marine Sergeant Brandon Morgan jumping into the arms of his
Got a
boyfriend
picture of it.
Dalen Wells.
There they are.
When he came home from duty in Afghanistan.
Ain't love grand?
This picture was because of the big
All-American.
flag in the back, because he's in uniform, because he's the one jumping into the arms of the boyfriend. This picture went viral and was very iconic. So we have an update on them. They're from Rochester, New York, and they got married.
There they go.
Congratulations
but
to
they weren't
them.
wearing their uniforms during their wedding.
Well, only one of them. The short one is the Marine. And only the Marines, it turns out, have a written policy allowing their members time to travel to get married in a marriage state. The Army and Navy have only interim directives.
the Army
Air
and
Force,
Navy say tell it to the Marines.
the Air Force has nothing yet, and a deployed soldier, someone who's in the Middle East who asked for leave to go marry his partner, was told, sorry, if you're in theater, there is only emergency leave available. So we all celebrated that the Department of Defense was going to let people go get married to give them time off, and the enforcement of that's a little spotty at the moment.
Okay.
In Indianapolis, an out gay city councilman is going to marry his boyfriend. They're going to go to D.C. to get married. And it's significant because Indiana's legislature next year is going to debate a state constitutional amendment to forbid same-sex marriage. And this guy wants to get married specifically to show Indiana more vividly that they have nothing to fear.
Okay.
But we have something to fear in Canada, where a Douglas Allen, who teaches at Simon Fraser University, is the latest right-wing activist to come up with a phony study about how kids of gay parents don't do as well as kids of straight parents. He's manipulated...
Junk science.
Well, he's manipulated figures from 2006 census before same-sex marriage was really in place in Canada. So he's compared kids of single parents to kids of married parents, and that is doesn't work.
You can't confuse the other side with the facts.
Yeah. All right. So.
Well, okay. Well, here's I guess what you could call some good news. Quinnipiac surveyed American Catholics. 68% agree with the Pope that the Church is too focused on homosexuality, abortion, and contraceptives. None of those policies have changed, by the way. American Catholics support same-sex marriage 60 to 31% versus 56 to 36% among all U.S. adults. And here's something significant. They always say, oh, but those who go to church, support the church. No, they don't. Those who go to church once a week, 56% support same-sex marriage. And among women, it's 72%. Catholics support the ordination of women. They support abortion in the same percentages as all Americans. It's, things are changing.
And the dean of the Washington Cathedral showed up at a press conference this week held by Truth Wins Out to condemn the Value Voters Summit taking place this weekend with all your favorite right-wingers.
In South Carolina, and we've got video on this, the Columbia, South Carolina police chief ordered some officers to participate in the Pride March there to show support for the community, as opposed to New York City, where police march in the anti-gay St. Patrick's Day parade. But listen to this, chief of police. There's a controversy there. It's from a story in South Carolina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Gadsden.
I'm Ben Hoover. We continue to follow the story out of the Columbia Police Department involving two officers
who objected to marching in a gay pride parade.
WIS has learned at least one of the officers went outside the chain of command involving the city manager's office. The interim police chief, Ruben Santiago, says it sets a dangerous precedent. Our Taylor Kearns has been following the story for the past couple of days. Taylor, what have you learned?
Well, today I did have a chance to talk with Interim Chief Santiago as well as Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott, and both of them agree that changing this order at the last minute is bad news for the department. Now, some of you have asked why these officers were commanded to march in this parade in the first place. Santiago says the answer is at the heart of his department's mission. Moreover, no officer has the latitude to disobey any lawful order.
Any law enforcement agency that expects to build public trust must demonstrate that by being visible to the public.
Interim Chief Ruben Santiago says his officers needed to be at the South Carolina Pride Parade. Marching, he says, was about sending a message.
People see firsthand, hey, the police department is about equality. They are about acceptance. And we want to make sure that we instill that so that if they need services, they won't hesitate one bit to count on us.
While some officers were assigned with crowd and traffic control, others from the department's Community Services Division were ordered to march. Two of them objected to the chief, citing religious reasons.
An officer cannot choose their assignments due to their religious beliefs. Mind you, we want to try to make the accommodations when we can. But in this case, we went through a process of trying to get volunteers. It came down to meeting the needs of that commitment we made to the event. And so that's why that directive was given.
But the objections continued. One of those officers started copying those emails to City Manager Teresa Wilson's office, going over Santiago's head. And on the morning of the event, Wilson had a discussion with Santiago, and what was a mandatory march was suddenly voluntary.
I would respect their wishes and their position, but I'm also going to say this is something you have to do.
Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott also had officers marching that day. His volunteered, but he agreed with Santiago that an officer's oath precludes them from ignoring lawful orders and that the city's involvement doesn't help.
A chief or sheriff's got to be made or make the decisions. The people that work underneath them is not going to respect them if they don't have that ability to make decisions. And I think that's one of the issues with the Columbia Police Department for many, many years, not just recently, but for years as long as I've been here.
It's not an ideal precedence to set at all. I mean, when you have a police department that really values strict discipline and adherence to and obedience to directives, then the chief of police is the person that they look towards for that direction.
Yesterday, City Manager Wilson told us that part of the reason for changing that order or discussing it with Santiago was that it turns out that they had enough officers show up for the event who wanted to do it voluntarily. Today we learned that Councilwoman Tamika Devine actually called Wilson that morning and said that one of those officers was threatening the city with a lawsuit if he was forced to participate. So that could be some more motivation for why this order was changed at the last minute.
And Chief Santiago pointed out to you that in some of these emails, he even cited legal cases from the past that supported, his position on it.
He's very confident that what he laid out there in those initial emails with just the officers, that what he was saying and that his orders were completely lawful. He says case law is on his side in this case.
All right, well, Taylor, continue to keep us updated on any new developments. We appreciate it.
I remember the firefighters in San Diego who wanted to opt out and were told they had to participate.
I suppose you were a recruitment officer and you were told to do a thing at the Gay Community Center or something. And, parades always for a lot of people, get into gray areas because of, you make the kind of a statement you're making. But the statement that this chief wants to make is, we're on your side.
Exactly.
Which is great.
And, if you had a racist police officer who didn't want to go work in a particular part of town, would they be allowed to do that?
Right.
No. And similarly, the Supreme Court, in its opening week of this term, had a couple of decisions, one of which was to reject an appeal by a vice president at the University of Toledo, a woman who had written an op-ed piece in the newspaper. She's African American, and she had objected to the equation of civil rights and gay rights, and she was quite vociferous about it in this op-ed piece and kind of nasty, and the University of Toledo fired her and said, you're in a position where you have to enforce our university standards about non-discrimination, and when you write things like this, you violate your terms of service. And she sued and said, you're violating my free speech rights, you're a state university, you can't do that. And she lost in court, and appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rejected her appeal.
Well, we'll see what happens then at Gallaudet University. You remember the dust up there that when they suspended their diversity officer, Angela McCaskill, because she signed a petition to put a referendum on the ballot in Maryland to ban same-sex marriage. Now, she said she took no position on it other than the right to vote on it. She's now suing them for she was suspended. She's suing them for $16 million for discrimination and defamation, saying her reputation was tarnished, implying she held anti-gay views. She was reinstated, although demoted.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what your position in these jobs is, because there are rules about the state.
Well, she signed a petition. I signed a petition for some things I'm not crazy about. I wanted to get them on the ballot. I wouldn't have signed this one.
Cut it out.
Well, I think people should be able to get on the ballot.
I don't think everyone should be able to get on the ballot, and that's one way you vote, is by not signing their petitions.
I don't like all the restrictions, but on a ballot, I wouldn't do it on a ballot initiative.
I don't know why you would sign a petition to put something on a ballot if you're against it.
A candidate
Yeah.
who I think has a right to be on the ballot, because I think that it's too onerous to get on the ballot in New York. I try to help everybody get on the ballot.
Okay.
I don't have to vote for them, and I don't.
I understand. I'm a little more pragmatic, I guess.
Right.
Vice President Biden canceled his appearance at the HRC.
Oh yeah, he's not vice president
dinner.
during the shutdown of the government.
That's right. He's one of the ones laid off, isn't he? No, I don't know that. But Jennifer Lopez showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new PAC that will only support non-religious candidates and religious candidates that support equality for all atheists and agnostics. 20% now identify as nuns when they say religion, N-O-N-E-S.
Yes.
The first one to do it was out bisexual Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, who we were railing about last week.
Exactly. And Faithful America, which is a religious progressive group, has been running a TV ad against a Republican congressman from Virginia, Randy Forbes, because he's attending the Values Voters Summit. So they're going after him for that.
And there's a religious denomination that has an out lesbian leader. It's the Reconstructionist movement in Judaism. We have a picture of her here. She's Rabbi Deborah Waxman, and she's the first woman and the first out lesbian. Well, of course, many firsts are. It's the smallest of the major strands of Judaism, with about 100 congregations. She lives in suburban Philadelphia with her partner, Christina Ager.
A couple of notes about productions of the Laramie Project play. First of all, because of the government shutdown, Ford's Theater had to move their scheduled performances of it to a nearby
World War II memorial
congregational church, my people, and UCC, because Ford's Theater is evidently a federal facility. Some connection. They had to move it. But another production of Laramie Project at the University of Mississippi brought a big row.
Well, there were
freshmen.
It was a packed audience, and
some assigned to attend.
There was some anti-gay hecklers who burped, coughed, giggled, catcalled, and many used anti-gay slurs. Get Equal says that the university should go beyond just apologizing and take some action. Affirmative action.
Well, the president of the university did apologize.
Big deal.
And the explanation was some of them were football players who were taking a course on theatrical appreciation, and they'd never been to a play before.
It is quite shocking experience. Well, I'm glad theater can still have this effect on people and upset things.
The actors in the play...
It doesn't happen too much in New York.
The actors in the play said, hey, this just convinced us we really need to do this play.
Yeah.
Fayetteville State University in North Carolina is the third historically black college to offer LGBT support services with an LGBT safe zone.
It's also to educate the whole place about.
Exactly.
Okay.
October, as you may remember, is LGBT History Month. You can go to lgbthistorymonth.com for a lot of historical information and knowledge of events that are happening.
And speaking of gay history, we have his picture. We mourn the loss of John Mitzel in Boston on October 4th. He worked at the Glad Day bookstore, and he opened up the Calamus bookstore 13 years ago. He co-founded the radical Fag Rag in 1971. This was a resource for me when I was just coming out. There'll be a memorial October 11th at 7 o'clock at the bookstore, 928 South Street.
I'm going to whip through a few things because we don't have a lot of time. Williams Institute study says Latinos, 4.3% LGBT, and mostly in California, Texas, New York, and Florida.
The coalition fighting the trans student bill out there through a referendum has a clever name for itself.
California.
California. What did I say?
You said out there.
Oh, California. They're calling themselves the Privacy for All Students. That's the name of the group.
The Republican Party of California has signed on to this.
You know, which is already
reaching out.
Which already barely exists in California.
And the right wing in Wyoming is going after Republican Senate candidate Liz Cheney, saying that she's too liberal, and they proved this because she appears on MSNBC to be interviewed and supports benefits for gay couples.
Yeah, it's tough to stay in line.
This woman is against same-sex marriage,
Her sister,
even with a lesbian sister.
Who's married.
And the only reason she goes on MSNBC is because they invite her to be interviewed.
We told you about the great controversy in New York over putting a plaque on the Stonewall Inn in New York, a historic plaque. So our Senator, Brad Hoylman, out gay, has taken control state senator, control of the process, and they're going to have a public hearing on October the 15th at NYU to do this. I'll put something in our email about this if people are interested in going, about what it says.
Growing movement, a state senator in Ohio, Charletta Tavares, has proposed a ban on conversion therapy for minors. Very good. And transgender Ray Ramsey, 17, has been elected homecoming king by a landslide at Concord High School in New Hampshire.
On the other hand, in Florida, the gay teen who had sex with her underage lover, Caitlin Hunt, took a plea, will spend 4 months in jail, followed by 2 years of house arrest, has been in jail since August 20th when she violated probation by contacting her underage lover. She was 18 and the lover was 14 when they began relationship. It's so
sad. The Supreme Court also rejected an appeal of the decision striking the Virginia sodomy law. Ken Cuccinelli has been trying to get the sodomy law reinstated in Virginia. Supreme Court says, forget it. It's gone. It's dead.
They've issued a guidance on Obamacare that says same-sex married couples eligible for premium tax credits in state health insurance marketplaces, even if they live in a state that doesn't recognize the marriage.
Excellent. But Justice Antonin Scalia gave an interview to New York Magazine in which he said, I have friends who I know or strongly suspect are homosexual. Asked if they had come out to him, he said, no. But I don't hate homosexuals.
All right, we got 5 minutes.
So Scalia says he doesn't, he's never had a conversation with anyone about
was he
being
condemned?
gay.
Was he condemned for giving an interview to New York Magazine?
Not yet.
All right.
And yeah, we can move on to other international news.
Well, the Gulf states are looking to develop some kind of a medical test to bar gays from the country.
It's about transgender people. It's about
they're talking about it.
People with anal sex signs. Monterrey, Mexico school expelled a 2-year-old girl. What's she doing in school in the first place? Because she has 2 dads, and said she could stay if they hid.
In Australia, the new anti-gay Prime Minister Tony Abbott's government will challenge the Australian Capital Territory's marriage equality law that's expected soon. Constitutional experts differ as to whether he will be successful in stopping them.
There is a mess in Colombia over same-sex marriage. A court had married a couple of couples, but the right wing is going back with other legal arguments, so some of that's being annulled.
The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution on children's right to physical integrity about intersex children, the first time they've done that.
No intersex surgery, female genital mutilation, circumcision, piercings, tattoos, or plastic surgery.
No circumcision on young boys for religious reasons.
Yes, it's all about self-determination, so let them grow up and decide what they want, don't impose it on them. A Singapore judge has upheld the sodomy law because there's no consensus on whether homosexuality is natural, and opinion needs time to evolve.
Okay.
The Vatican will hold a meeting on family issues, divorced Catholics, communion. Don't hold your breath
about us?
on anything for us.
AIDS
Forget
news?
it. Sure.
Well, in Iowa, the state high court affirmed the conviction of an HIV-positive man for criminal transmission of HIV, even though he did not transmit HIV.
Oh, this is common.
The trial court at least reduced the sentence from 25 years to probation for 5, but he still has to register as a sex offender. The court says if the statute's outmoded, the legislature has to change it. So you can be convicted if you have oral sex without a condom because it is intimate contact under the law.
He had applied for post-conviction relief, and the court denied it because they said oral sex was too dangerous. There's a new exhibit at the New York Public Library, Why We Fight, Remembering AIDS Activism. There's a report that fewer deaths from AIDS by South African kids has reduced their infant mortality statistics overall. Let's go to entertainment news.
Well, I haven't seen the new Daniel Radcliffe movie, Killing, what is it called?
Kill Your Darlings.
Yes, but where he plays Allen Ginsberg as a college student, but he has a gay sex scene in it apparently, as Allen Ginsberg, and he said to the New York Times, he said, and people raise a fuss about this, I honestly don't know what the big deal is. People have been having gay sex for as long as they've been having straight sex, period, which is longer than the idiot governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
We did see this new production, Mildred Fierce, playing on weekends at Theater 80 St. Mark's through October.
Go ahead.
Varla Jean Merman as the Joan Crawford character.
This is a Boston company headed by Ryan Landry.
Yeah.
As if Mildred Pierce wasn't campy enough with Joan Crawford.
I like the tap dancing. That was my favorite part of it. It's a musical parody, and they say adults only, because it does get a little raunchy.
You better be a fan of drag if you're going to go, as many people are.
Gay Games for 2018 have been awarded to Paris. Better than Sochi.
Paper Mill Playhouse had Honeymoon in Vegas, based on that 90s movie with James Caan and Sarah Jessica Parker. This has Tony Danza and Rob McClure of Chaplin. It's a madcap comedy. Could use some tightening before it gets to Broadway in the spring. I was amazed at how Tony Danza sings like Harry Connick.
Oh, he's good. Glee has a new lesbian storyline with Demi Lovato hooking up with Naya Rivera.
The Glass Menagerie on Broadway with Cherry Jones and Zachary Quinto. I would call it definitive, just like that Cate Blanchett Streetcar a couple of years ago. Cherry really gets the mother out of the monster role, and you really understand the whole thing. And of course Zachary Quinto does bring a whole gay thing to the role of what is essentially Tennessee Williams, the Tom role. So it's a terrific production.
We got 30 seconds to do Valentine Road on HBO. You can see it on demand. You can see it on HBO Go. You can see it several times on HBO through October.
It's very, very disturbing to watch. I think it's a little too even-handed. I think there's a little blaming the victim that goes on here, which people do, in the case. But it's sort of uncritical about that.
I had very mixed reactions to it, but there's a lot of stuff in it that's interesting to see. So Valentine Road on HBO, take a look, see what you think, and we will be back here next week.